And it was a really inspiring piece and something that, will resonate with me because I learned about the different, it all came together to speak about the multifaceted sections of life of itself when you can have it in your palm of your hands and then the next time it becomes so much uncontrollable that we can't deal with it. But the poem provides motivation and it also guides you into certain direction where you feel as though there is hope. So tell us about your writing process. How do you manage your writing process and what do you do to prevent um, writing blocks?
I think writing block is not something that you could prevent. One of the things I do now, I can do personalized poems or poems for different occasions and so on. And sometimes I'll work with a theme. And so, they say, the theme is, about, women empowerment or whatever. And so you sit down and you think, I would think about all the things that I would want to say that I believe would empower women. Or let's say it's, Mother's Day or Father's Day. What can I say to encourage mothers to keep doing what they're doing or fathers to, to be there and make a note of those points that I want to get over and then begin to try to flesh it out. And then, of course, there comes that point. Sometimes, if it's a topic that's very dear to me, it will just flow. And then there are other times when, even though it's flowing, you get to that place of that point of stop. Or being that I'm a mom, sometimes you have a little tap on the door or a little tap on the shoulder, mommy, can I do this, can I do that, and out of necessity you need to pause and then come back and then try to get yourself back into that flow. um, Sometimes when you try to get back into the flow, it doesn't come right away. One of the things, though, because I'm working on so many different projects, sometimes if I'm blocked in this area, I just simply go over to the other area and be like, okay, fine, I can't think about the mothers right now. Let me see what's going on here, on this topic of, women motivation and allow it to flow. But writing tend to come reasonably easy for me. Like I said, it's something since high school I loved English and I love playing around with words, and I'm one of those weirdos that would read the dictionary
Yeah, I
and look at
know.
the different words and which would mean this and how this one sounds and so on. So writing to me comes fairly easy, but you do have to deal with that. Sometimes when I can't move forward, I like to go outdoors. I like to go outdoors, take a walk on the seawall, in the gardens, just sit down, just breathe. And as you know, um, replenish your own personal self, that now motivates you. You pick it up back and the flow is there again.
And I wouldn't say it's a weird thing to read a dictionary because right now we are experiencing that. I realized that with the advent of AI, the students cannot use a dictionary. They find the word on Google or whatever, but to have that physical dictionary, they don't know where's the reference. They
Yes.
don't know when the end means down for. So we have that break there in that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the creative block. They will have creative block, whether it's in writing, dance, poetry, whatever it is, it's always there. And you have another means of switching to another project. But what happens to those who don't have another project? They sometimes sit. They sometimes sit there for hours and then sometimes they shelve great ideas and they don't ever return to them.
Uh,
Um, but I would want to ask you, where do you get your inspiration from?
I would say life in general. Like I said, I used it as my self therapy, and so whenever something good happens, I write it down. Whenever something bad happens, I write it down. And especially if it's something that's not all that good, writing it down when you see it on paper, like, this is how I feel, like, this is not a good place. And then it allows you to move on from there. Right, so that's probably one of the main things that I do. Write it down. Take all the different things in life. Sometimes something, you open the newspapers and you see something that is just so um, impressive to your soul, and sometimes you just feel so helpless. Like, what can I do about this? And I may not be able to, go there, with a placard, but I can write something that the next time, there's an event on this, I can say something that makes sense to the people who hear it.
And that's good because you're tailoring whatever you're going to do to the audience to suit the audience. Now I know that you said that you got your inspiration from life and you write, so you always have your notepad there and you're gonna write. The hardest thing for me to do is write it down. However, I know of a poet who would have done an anthology based on her children. And so she observed their growth throughout childhood, and she kept writing over the years. And when they were like 12 years old, and the other one was like 14, she published an anthology based on her children and the experience she gained from motherhood. So I don't know if you would have that same sort of, observation with your children, and let them be a part.
Yes. I write little things about them. Whenever it's Mother's Day, I have one piece that I call My Little Flowers that was basically dedicated to my little girls. Um, many different things that, experiences with them, that I take note of. And sometimes I see them doing things that I know I used to do. Like I remember somewhere, I don't remember where it was, but there are certain places that have these big stones that as children, you would just jump from one stone and try to jump to the other one. And I saw my little girl doing that, and I thought, like, interesting, because like I'd never brought her there before. It's the first time she was going to that place. I can't remember where it was. And here she was trying to jump from one stone to the other. And it takes you back to that place, of childhood and remembering what that is like. And that helps me a lot of times in dealing with them. And if you're advising other mothers to understand, like, hey, these are kids, remember you were there. So my children bring a lot of inspiration to me in my writing. And my big girl is now writing, so sometimes I'm finishing a piece and I'm like, what do you think about this? And she picks it up and she's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm editing you, mommy.
And that's good. That's really good. And I know that, from knowing you before, you were a lot into your religious side. Um, what do you have pieces on spiritualism?
Oh, yes. I have many pieces that talk about, God's love for us. That's one of the things that I think is lacking. A lot of times reminding people that, hey, you're not out there alone, but God is with you. Whatever name you want to call him, there is a being that is out there that loves you. And so sometimes I do pieces on different scriptures. Like tomorrow we have this thing in church, and so I'll be doing a piece based on the theme that they have, the verse that they have. And so I'll be able to pull on that and encourage people to, hey, keep trusting in God. Sometimes things don't look like how they seem, but if you keep believing, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So it goes right back again to believing in this thing and going after it. Even some of the things that people push as regular motivation are biblical. It says, take the vision and write it down. Write down your plans. All those are biblical concepts. And so sometimes, most of the times, whenever I'm doing a religious piece, I would use scripture as reference to the things that are normally challenging in life, so that people know that, okay, you're not here alone. For centuries, people have been passing through this and coming out on the other side by just holding on to their faith.
And that's wonderful. Sometimes we do need that reminder that somebody's there, and for us to trust in our being, or supreme being, whichever one you decide to follow. So this book that you have, tell us about the book.
This book, Hey You, I'm Enough, is basically, like I said, it is one of those, and I would probably want to read the preface for you. And I said, most of us will at some point find ourselves at a crossroads along our journey of life, a point where we're forced to make decisions that hold the power to shape the rest of your sojourn on earth. And what I've discovered is that those times, the inner reflection provides the truest image of who we really are. An honest gaze at that reflection will allow for meaningful analogy of your current state of affairs and permit one to observe the role that we must now amply play in our scenarios. Many times we realize that our real life drama is so vivid that they are worthy of Broadway, and the intensity of which we live will ultimately guide us down the path that's most suited to our gifts. And so, as you read this, my prayer is that you learn how to throw off those inhibitions and live without boundaries. This is a collection that's meant to let you reflect on who you are and the power that you have within you to make it, to hone your skills and come out on top. Many times, the difference between being just regular and achieving something great is just simply your persistence, your perspective on things, and holding fast to that perspective regardless of what other people think and what other people say about it. Holding fast to what you believe in.
And that is a type of piece that most persons would want to read because it gives us a glimpse of what life is like on your end.
Mm-hmm.
And also it should be able to motivate us to by your strategies that you're using to cope so that we can move forward in our everyday life. How many pieces are in the book?
This one has just 35 pieces. I am currently working on some other collections.
Because when I just heard you said this one has 35 pieces, so I know that the more is yet to come. Is there anything that you want to give us a sneak peek about what's in the other edition?
There are two others I'm working on. One of them, I wanted to pull together all my stuff on Guyana. Like I've done poetry for national events, and so I'm very patriotic. I'm one of those people, that anytime people talk anything bad in Guyana, it's like, hey, hold up, you probably have not seen the real Guyana. I'm one of those people who've been fortunate to go all across the length and breadth of this country. I've been to all 10 regions, and so I know that we have beautiful white water lakes in the middle of nowhere that you can stand in and see your toes from, water that's way up to your neck. I know that the mountains, I know what it's like to stand on a mountain and look across this green sea and all those things. And so sometimes when people are like, Guyana is this and Guyana is that, and the place is messy, and like, you're just in the wrong part.
Correct.
And so I have a volume that talks about all of that, talks about, the different things. I've got pieces like, I can't afford to be racial, which talks about the fact that many of us, we mixed up. You got a grandfather that's Indian,
Yeah.
another grandfather who's Chinese and Portuguese, and then African. And when you have family gatherings like mine,
Then you would
is
see
all over the
variation.
place. And their family, there's this little white kid and there's this little black kid. Like in my case, I mean, there's my mother's family is as mixed as they come. They're fair-skinned Indians and dark-skinned black people and dark-skinned Indians and whatever mixed up. Because my grandfather come from traditional. He wanted to marry the black girl, but then some of the family weren't too keen, so he had a black wife and an Indian wife, and so his children with the Indian wife look fully Indian, and his children with the black look mixed up. And they're brothers and sisters standing next to each other. And there are many of us that have that story. So whenever we have this political thing come up and it, racial divide, I have pieces to talk about that. Like, hey, we can't afford to be racial because at the end of the day, what are you going to do with the rest of your family?
Correct. Because they're family.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about what motivates and what drives you, and also we'll ask you to leave a quote before we wrap up, so that persons out there who wants to be carrying care, Gil Care, will hear and be motivated by that. So we are almost down to the end of our interview here with Miss Karen Gilcare, and I know that she would have expressed about her different pieces in the book, and she has other editions that are coming out. So before we go into asking her to give us another piece, I'd like to ask her, how many years now have you been writing?
I think I've been writing for as long as I can remember. Even now, like I see my kids are always with a pen and paper, like what are they doing here, and people are like, hey, Kylie is Ucharan.
Exactly, and so it's innate, it's within their genes to write.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a lot of persons who are out there and they're listening, and they would want to become a writer too, or they have the dream of publishing their first book and be just like you, or even be somebody in society who writes. What motivation do you live by, or personal mantra that daily you look yourself in the mirror, you tell yourself, or you live with it rent free, you have it rent free in your brain, that you would want to share to the general public?
There's one of my main mantra I heard so long ago, I don't even remember where, but it's called be the labor, great or small, do it well or not at all. And that's one of the things I live by. Even if it's something small, even if it's something big, do it with your all. And so for me, regardless of whether or not I am reciting to one person or whether it's a crowd of person, I give it my all. My point is that I know that these messages are not just for me. These messages are meant to come through me to encourage other persons. And so whenever I do it, I don't take it lightly. I've had the honor of people coming to me and say, hey, I really needed to hear this today. And so that motivates me to keep going and keep giving it my best. Whatever it is you're doing, don't just be sloppy at it. Hone your skills. Like after a while, I went to the Institute of Creative Arts and did a diploma in creative writing to make sure that all the things line up with not just talent, but also with all the different proper skill set on how these things are properly written.
And I was going to ask you about that form of formal education. I know I did see graduation photos of you, because I'm also in the creative art industry, so we keep abreast with what's happening there. And the National School of Theatre Arts and Drama has indeed graduated some of our best writers, directors, poets, and all of that. And so I'm happy that you went there and you got that formal education on how to put together your pieces and everything. So before you leave the program, we're kindly asking if you have another piece to share with us and for our listeners out there.
Okay. I'll share this one called Reach for Life. Well, not the whole one, but just part of it. Now it says, yet again you failed. Circumstances prevailed. Life overpowered you. What do? Yet again you give it your best shot, but fell short of the mark because the fire was too hot. Too hot to handle, although you adequately prepared, and now the damage and the hurt cannot be repaired. Someone's heart was broken, another felt left down, and your hope for betterment has been crushed to the ground, trampled upon by a cruel twist of fate, and it seems there's no fix, and it's definitely too late. You can't think of anyone who's come this before and desire to throw in the towel knocks on your door. But though the end seems near amid all the inner strife, I urge you, don't give up. Reach for life. And then going down to the end, it says, remember that during the battle, there's a cost, often a high price. But every time you stumble, get back up and reach for life. Yes, reach for life in the midst of adversity. Reach for life in the face of animosity. Reach for life no matter how low or depressed you feel. Reach for life knowing that hope is always real. Thunder ushers in lightning. Night is followed by morning. And after a destructive ride, even tidal waves subside and allow for a new beginning. Don't fall for circumstantial lies, clouding your skies with temporary demise. Remember, you are a prize, so reach for life.
And that's wonderful. Reminding us that life is there and it's always going to be there. You have to know what you want and you have to reach for it. Right? So sometimes I think that piece also reminds me that we must come out of our comfort zone sometimes